You know, a lot of people think that being an entrepreneur, a small businessman, that's the answer to all their problems. But it can be an answer to some problems, and on the other hand, it will create some other problems as well. So you can't escape problems, but you just need to be aware of that so you can be better equipped. Today I want to talk to you about entrepreneurship, being your own boss. And there's certainly a lot that can be said about it, but I want to focus on this one thing, or this one aspect of it. And I think probably most people would tend to romanticize or idealize the concept of being your own boss. And there is a lot to it that seems very like a good idea, very favorable, because people think, oh, if I'm my own boss, then I'm not answering to somebody else. I can set my own hours. I can name my own price. I can work as much as I want or whenever I want. And that's all true. Though those are definitely the pros of being your own boss. And I think another major pro is that you're able to build wealth for yourself rather than for whoever you're working for. And it's certainly not the only way to build wealth, but it is a major way to do so. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said for being your own boss. And as I said, it's very easy to romanticize that, to view the whole concept through rose-colored glasses. But I think that if you are serious about being an entrepreneur, about being your own boss, you owe it to yourself to look before you leap, to study the issue so you can at least know what you're getting into. And I assure you, being your own boss is not for everyone, for one thing, and there's a lot of headache and stuff associated with that. So this is not meant to discourage you if that's what you truly intend to do. But I think you do need to be realistic about it and understand not only what the pros are, but what the cons are as well. Well, to start off, let's think of it this way. I said one of the pros is that you can work whenever you want. You can work as much as you want or as little as you want, and that's certainly true. But the flip side of that is if you do not work, you won't get any money. You won't get paid. You don't have a paycheck coming in. You don't have vacation pay. You don't have sick pay or paid time off or any of that. So yeah, you can take every Tuesday off or whatever, but just be aware that that means that you're not having any money coming in on that day. So the work whenever you want is kind of a two-edged sword. It has a good side and a bad side. So you have to be aware of that. Another thing to be aware of is that when you are an entrepreneur, there are a lot of tax issues that you have to take care of. It's way more complicated. I mean, the tax code is complicated enough as it is. It's overcomplicated as far as I'm concerned. But when you are working for yourself, whether it be sole proprietor or an LLC, or you incorporate in the S Corp or what have you, there are certain tax whatever that you have to comply with, and it can get very tricky very fast. Different filing deadlines, and you got to do quarterly this and so on and so on and so on. So it's a headache to deal with, especially if things go off the rails. So you would definitely want to hire a CPA, at least initially, until you figure out what's going on. And even so, most people go into business to do whatever it is that they love doing. And so they're not going to be wanting to spend a bunch of time monkeying with taxes. So even if they can afford it, even if they can't afford it, they probably end up hiring a CPA anyhow. But anyways, yeah, the tax compliance can be a real nightmare if you are not careful. So that's a con. Goes without saying. Another con is that there are a lot of regulations, especially the more formal your company structure is. If you're a sole proprietor, that's probably one thing, but when you start talking about being an LLC or an S corp like that, then there's other stuff that comes into play. You might have to get a business license, you might have to get business insurance, you might have to do this, you might have to do that, you have to pay unemployment, all kinds of regulations. And sometimes the regulations arise because, some disaster, whatever happens, and then people say, oh, there ought to be a law against this, that, blah, blah, blah. And so then Congress says, okay, we'll save the day, and they create all kinds of gotta-dos to handle that. And then that gets dumped in your lap. You got to take care of that. But I think that's part of the way that these regulations arise. But I think also a major reason why there is regulation is because regulation, hyper-regulation, over-regulation is used as a cudgel by big business to discourage entrepreneurs, especially small entrepreneurs, because big business does not like competition. And I would say it's the same thing kind of related to the tax code too. Both the tax compliance and regulatory compliance are used as cudgels for big business to get rid of smaller companies. I'm convinced of that. Because why? When you think about when you have an overly complicated tax code or when you have overly complicated regulatory compliance situations, what does big business do? They've got deep pockets, so they can hire a phalanx of lawyers to take care of all their taxes for them, to take care of all the regulatory compliance and all other whatever, discrimination, whatever. They can hire lawyers to take care of all that stuff so they can, keep their noses clean. What about the mom and pop small business? They don't have the money for hiring a ton of lawyers. They probably don't have the money to hire one, right? So what happens? They go crazy trying to comply with this kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm convinced that that taxation, the tax laws, and the regulations and statutes and ordinances and this and that, all those are set up to favor big business. And so there's a lot of people that perhaps would want to be an entrepreneur, but then they start getting neck deep in this stuff and they say, oh my gosh, this is such a headache. They lie awake at night because they don't know how to deal with this, or it's, it's draining their energy. They want to, have a business painting birdhouses or whatever it is, but they're so drained from all this other stuff that they just say, forget it. It's easier for me to get a 9-to-5 job and go that route. So, yeah, I'm convinced that that sort of compliance issue, that's a major reason why most people don't even think about being an entrepreneur. So, yeah, like I said, I don't mean to discourage you, but I think that if you do want to go that route, please be aware that it's not a bed of roses. It's not all fun and games. There is a lot of hassle that you have to put up with. And you should be aware of that so you can at least be prepared. Something else I would say about if you want to be an entrepreneur is definitely talk to other small businessmen or other small entrepreneurs and ask them their experience. What, if they have any tips or advice on starting out, that kind of stuff. And that can be very helpful to talk to someone who's, that can be very helpful to talk to someone who's gone that route already, so you can be aware of some of the pitfalls. And I would also say, don't limit yourself to talking to entrepreneurs or small businessmen that are successful, but maybe also talk to small businessmen or entrepreneurs who have tried and failed. And you might say, well, why would I take advice for them? Trust me, they will have advice for you. They will give you an idea of, oh, I did this and it was a mistake. And if I were doing it over, I would do XYZ instead. So there's something to be said for learning vicariously through others' mistakes. So, but yeah, I've often thought about, a lot of people think that being an entrepreneur, a small businessman, that's the answer to all their problems. But it can be an answer to some problems, and on the other hand, it will create some other problems as well. So you can't escape problems, but you just need to be aware of that so you can be better equipped if and when you do decide to go that route. So that's all I wanted to say today. I hope you found this informative. I hope it gave you something to think about. What do you say? Have you tried having your own business or maybe a side hustle even? What did you do? Were you a sole proprietor, or did you do an S Corp, or did you do LLC or whatever? How was your experience? And what advice would you give for others? So let's have a discussion in the comments. If you like this video, if it gave you something to think about, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and share it with someone whom you think might benefit from that. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.